NBC News national security analyst, and author of the book, The FBI Way, Inside the Bureau's Code of Excellence. Frank, I just saw you on MS with Nicole Wallace a short time ago. Thanks for making time here tonight.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm glad I could do it. Yeah, I was on for both hours with Nicole, and we covered a lot of ground there, and I'm sure we're going to try that again tonight.
We are, but first we have to start with this Alaskan cruise that you're hosting in June. So you're a cruise director now, in addition, FBI. Is the cruise a sting? Is this like an FBI sting operation? You're getting all criminals onto the boat, and then you arrest them? Like, tell us about this. Seriously, I'm not kidding.
Really, if someone had told Dean, if someone had told me, 5 years ago, hey, you're going to be hosting a cruise and plugging it, I would have said, no, you're out of your mind. But you know what? I've been convinced that it's time for us to unplug and reset and get the hell out of whatever it is we're doing and go away. And I've been all over the world, but I've never been to Alaska. And so I figured, yeah, okay, I'll take it. I'll host it. I'll invite all my Twitter friends and your listeners and everybody else. And it's happening in June. If you want more information, check it out on my website, frankfigliuzzi.com. It's a high-end Oceania cruise. The ship is Regatta, not to be confused with Regatta, which is an Italian cheese. And, we'll come on board, we'll talk, we'll chat, and most of all, we'll see some great...
It goes from Alaska, it goes from California to Alaska.
Out of Seattle to Alaska.
Oh, Seattle to Alaska. I just saw today, I'm not even kidding, that a Russian citizen fled the draft by taking a boat to Alaska. So if you're on their way there, you see dinghies coming out of Russia. It's draft dodgers. I shouldn't even call them draft dodgers. People don't want to fight in Putin's illegal war, and they want out of there.
To borrow a phrase from Sarah Palin, I can see Russia from my cabin.
You'll be able to see Russia from your cabin. That's great. So if you're interested, folks, I'm sure Frank will be on between now and June to plug it more. I'm really intrigued. If I was a fan of cruises, I go like, I'll talk to the bosses here, let me broadcast from the ship and everything, but I'm not. Frank's like, yeah, I could see him because we're doing this live Zoom. I don't know, Frank. I'm not. Ships and me, like I'm from Jersey, okay? I'm half Sicilian. Ships are just like a one-way trip. They're tossing you overboard. You got cement shoes on. You know what I'm talking about. You can't. I'm going to
talk you into this, and we're going to do a show from the cruise ship. Now you've got me.
That would be funny. Right. If you just say get a cruise, like if someone wants to, like, hey, you want to ride? Like, I'm not sitting in the back. Okay, I'm going to sit up in the front. You just, the whole thing. My mom always taught me, don't sit with your back to the door. I'm not even a joke. That's my Sicilian mom. Would say that.
That's law enforcement. That's law enforcement. I never sit with my back to the door. But anyway,
it's also Sicilian, so it was perfect. So Frank, let's talk about serious things here. Very serious today. 3 members of the Oath Keeper and an associate were convicted of seditious conspiracy. Just so people get a sort of a context here, how serious of a crime is seditious conspiracy, and is it difficult to prove?
Okay, so here's the short answer: really serious, and yes. So here's the history of seditious conspiracy prosecutions in the country is not good. They fail. They fail miserably because it's really hard to show that 2 or more people conspired together to use force to overthrow a government act, to stop the government, right? And you get into all kinds of motivations. We didn't really mean it. We weren't of one mind. It's hard and it fails. And so it happens very rarely. But look, it's not so rare now because not only have we convicted Stuart Rhodes, the leader of Oath Keepers, but now, as you said, we've got 4 more people. And one of those guys is a really tight confidant of Stuart Rhodes, the Oath Keepers leader. And I think what the takeaway here is, the juries are convinced that the evidence is overwhelming of the planning and coordination and intent. And what fascinates me about the Oath Keepers trials so far is they're all saying, we were waiting for Donald Trump to invoke the Insurrection Act, right? Which is then going to kick us into action. And people might say, wait, refresh me on the Insurrection Act. We got to revisit this act, by the way, because it says the president, and only the president by himself, has the authority to call out the military and the quote unquote militia in the event that someone is trying to mess with the law or an official act. That's it. And so Oath Keepers say, hey, we're a militia. Just invoke the Insurrection Act and we'll show up. we got to look at that again and spread the wealth around among Congress and the courts to invoke the Insurrection Act. But the other thing to take away from this is, if you're the Proud Boys right now, if you're Enrique Tarrio sitting on trial right now, and you're looking at this going, oh my God, we are screwed because they're charged with seditious conspiracy as well. Don't be surprised if somebody amongst the Proud Boys group says, I'll take a plea deal. I'm not going down for this.
Because it's up to 20 years in prison, and there could be other charges they're convicted of as well. The Proud Boys are on trial right now in the same courthouse. It's fun, very interesting. In the same courthouse, I was reading today, or at least the same court complex, another January 6th defendant was convicted of 8 counts. He's the guy who put his feet on the desk, on Speaker Pelosi's desk, right? And left her a note and left a quarter. And what's interesting? Afterwards, he said, and his lawyer said the same thing, that we respect the process, but this was not a jury of our peers, and we're going to appeal. And I get a fear now that the new argument by some on the right is going to be that the Sixth Amendment guaranteed to a jury is got to be people who agree with you, who are MAGA people, who believe the election was fraud. I don't think that's going to be a winning argument, but it doesn't matter for the world of Fox News and Newsmax and stuff like that. I could see that getting traction. I'm concerned that because they're again now delegitimizing our home criminal justice system, which has got enough problems on its own. But I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, this is not the first time this concept of not being able to find an unbiased jury in the District of Columbia has come up. It's come up before, and you're right. I think we're going to start hearing a steady drumbeat of it. And so my response is, okay, so let me get this right. What would be a jury of your peers? Would that be everybody is a MAGA guy only if you voted for Trump? What's that? What does that mean? The courts have held over and over through the decades that it means people from your community, and I think we're good there. But you're right; it plays well on Fox News to say, the DC citizens, they're all lefties.
Yeah, his own lawyer for this guy literally said today it was all Biden voters, and this isn't fair. So I guess that's the basis for their appeal. The guy is photographed in Pelosi's office with his feet on the desk. I'm like, really? If any jury would find you not guilty, seeing that's at a MAGA rally. That's the only people that are going to do that. Like, yeah, that's fine doing it on Speaker Pelosi's desk. And the guy had a 900,000 plus stun gun on him. That was the voltage of it that he'd bought in advance to go to a peaceful rally. That and pepper spray. So look, I'm glad he's convicted. But look, Frank, when we look at Oath Keepers, Proud Boys, nearly 1,000 people arrested, they were there for one person. They were there for Donald Trump. Donald Trump called them there. Donald Trump lied to them about the election. He called them to be there on January 6th. He gave an incendiary rally where he told them to fight for Trump and stop the steal. And I'm going to the Capitol with you. And here we are 2 years and 17 days since January 6th, and Donald Trump's not been charged with even one thing yet. In your heart, do you think Donald Trump's ever getting charged for those crimes related to January 6th?
Yeah, let me first follow up on something you said that's really important, which is they were there for one person, Oath Keepers, Proud Boys. And I know you're following the Proud Boys trial, but in the first week of the trial, what did the leader, Enrique Tarrio, what did his attorney say to the court? They weren't responsible for January 6th. Donald Trump was responsible for January 6th. He rallied the crowd. He told them to fight like hell or we're not going to have a country anymore. So these are the Proud Boys saying that it was Donald Trump's fault. So absolutely, it lies at his feet. Now, my personal and professional opinion as to whether he's going to get charged, he's going to get charged. He's going to get charged. And, Nicole Wallace, speaking of MSNBC, interviewed just a couple days ago the lead investigator for the January 6th commission.
Mm-hmm.
And he said to her on the air, she asked him, do you see any scenario where Donald Trump isn't charged, where the DOJ can't charge him? And the lead investigator, seeing all the evidence that they've seen for a year now, said there's no way he has to be charged. He will be charged. So he's going to get charged. I think the larger question is, does he get convicted? How long does this go on? What kind of a circus is it? Is he still alive when he's finally sentenced? I don't know.
Right. This could be delayed. And earlier before you came on, I was talking about the timing of this. Say the special counsel needs 6-7 months, which would be fair to do everything. Well, that takes us to the summer, and the first GOP debates are in August, like they were in 2016. Are you really going to indict the leading Republican candidate while the debates are going on, just a few months from the first caucus? And the first caucus is a year from now in Iowa, Republican caucus. That's how it kicks off, as we all know. Merrick Garland, the institutionalist, it concerns me that so much of what is about appearing fair. And it troubles me to think that he might not want to charge Donald Trump because it's so close to the primary contests.
Yeah, I think this is tearing him up, and I think it will tear him up even more. And you're right, he's an institutionalist, and we need that kind of person to care about our institutions, and DOJ in particular. So I think the clock is ticking. As much as we hear everybody at DOJ say we will not be swayed by timing or politics or anything, look, this has to get done before the election goes. I think the campaign really starts in earnest. And let's be real here. Donald Trump appears to really not be in this campaign for real. This is a defensive maneuver, in my opinion. Announcing you're running for office when you really don't have a fair shot is a defensive move. So yeah, the special counsel got it. He's got to put it on the fast track, no question about it. And there's every indication, Dean, that he is. You can watch every week, watch Trump's postings on Truth Social, which is neither Truth nor Social, right? And how livid he increasingly is becoming. You know why? Because his buddies are calling him going, God darn it, I just got hauled before the grand jury and it's your fault. And I'm not going down for you. So every time he posts about the special counsel and it's unfair, another buddy has called him and said, they're screwing with me in the grand jury.
And I was wondering, what is triggering him? We don't see anything in the reporting, but there's like a rant. It's reported by some media outlet, like 1 a.m. Trump is attacking not only special counsel, not only his wife, but his wife's sister. Like he has gone off the deep end. And I was wondering, what is it? And I'm like, he's got to know something because it can't just be random. So that's what you're thinking, that Trump is getting calls from people who've been subpoenaed before a grand jury.
Yeah. Well, it's not, I'm not clairvoyant. It's coming right in his postings. His last couple of postings have said, they're hauling my friends before the grand jury. So, hey, thank you. Thanks for breaking any grand jury secrecy. We appreciate that.
I'm chatting with Frank Figliuzzi, MSNBC and NBC national security analyst. So, Frank, you wrote an article for MSNBC Daily a few days ago suggesting President Biden should consent to have his house to be searched by the FBI. And apparently he saw it because on Friday they consented. And I don't know if he saw it or not, but how rare is it for someone to consent to the FBI to do a search of your house, which went on for 13 hours, according to reporting?
It is always good to know the President of the United States is reading your column on a regular basis. And
right, it's very good.
You suggested. Yeah, I wrote that published on Tuesday, and then on Friday it actually happened. So here's the deal. I try to play it as straight as I can in my role as a national security analyst, meaning I just try to tell the audience and share with them what would happen in real life if it's not the president, if it's not Biden, if it's not Trump. And I just said in my column, you know what we do in the FBI if someone was cooperating on any kind of a case, particularly a leak case? You know what the next step would ordinarily be? You go to your briefcase as the FBI agent, you take out your handy dandy FD-24 consent to search form, which every FBI agent keeps in their car, and you say, sir or madam, I'm so happy that you are cooperating. And we need to take a look around and ensure that you've turned everything over. And you're not certain you've turned everything over, are you? No, I'm not, because my lawyers don't have a clearance. Right. Okay. And so let's take a look around. Yes, please sign here. Great. 13 hours later, they have found additional docs. Interestingly, at least one dating back to his time as a U.S. Senator. So how you asked me how common is it? Dean, it happens every day in this country. Some citizen is signing a consent to search form with some law enforcement agency saying, yeah, come in, take a look around. Every day.
Do you think, I know we don't know this, unless you do know this, do you think Trump was offered the same thing before they had to go get the search warrant, that the idea of the FBI?
Right. So, I took, let's see, 2 or 3 death threats when my column was posted on Tuesday, because, numbskulls saying, among other vile graphic threats, saying, hey, Figliuzzi, you're suggesting that he gets a free ride, he gets to consent and invite the FBI into his home, and the FBI searched with a warrant at Trump's place? Are you crazy? They used much more colorful language than that. So here's my response. I can list 10 differences between the two cases, but the key one that you're keying in on is, Trump actually did have people from DOJ show up. The head of the national security section at DOJ showed up and said, sir, can we look around? And have you really given us everything? And National Archives kept calling him. And, and then comes, this form from his lawyer saying we've turned everything over. And then comes a subpoena saying, you need to officially turn everything over. He blows that off. He lies on the form. He doesn't let FBI agents on the first nice friendly visit. He doesn't let them into certain rooms and looking in certain boxes. So anybody who says they're being treated differently, I say, no, they are different, and they are being treated differently because you're seeing the difference between a cooperative person and an obstructionist.
Did you handle any cases dealing with classified documents when you were in the FBI?
I led, as assistant director, I led all leak investigations and mishandling.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, have you seen cases based on your experience where there was a criminal prosecution, if there was not intentional withholding or intentional concealment or intentional taking of documents?
You have to show intent. Even for the lowest level charge, which would be something called mishandling, you've got for the criminal side of that, you've got to show that the person deliberately put it someplace it's not supposed to be and deliberately tried to retain it in an inappropriate or unlawful manner. Yeah, intent's required, and we don't. This is why another thing, people screaming at me, why do you think Joe gets to invite the FBI and not have a search warrant? As you know, Dean, a search warrant requires two things. You've got to show the magistrate that you think a crime's occurred, and you got to show that the stuff you're looking for is in that location. Well, what crime has occurred if the guy is cooperating with you and you can't prove intent? A magistrate's not going to sign that search warrant.
So if just assume this facts for a second, we don't know if it's 100% true, but say people in Biden's office packed his documents for him and he didn't even know they were there. And he goes in, he stumbles upon them like, uh-oh, what's this? Is there any criminality there if he does what immediately raises the red flags or the bells to people that have to?
First of all, no one on Fox is letting those kinds of facts mess with their narrative every night. I've yet to hear somebody on Fox go, oh, so this was some assistant who packed his boxes at the end of his term and didn't get it right? Is that what this is? No, what they're implying every night on Fox is he's bringing home bushels of classified and sticking them under the bed. That's not what we know right now. Criminality. I feel very sorry. I believe it's a woman who packed his offices up at a pretty high assistant level for the VP at the time. And I believe she's gonna the weight of the world is going to come down on her head. Do I think she intended to do that? Do I think she knew there were classified documents in the boxes she was packing amongst all the other documents? I don't think so, but that's why special counsel. Is there some squirreliness going on, as you'll hear on Fox News, with regard to the timing of the DOJ phone call, right? So lawyers find this in his office at the Penn Biden Center. I do find it interesting that he sent lawyers to close his office up. I don't know what's going on there. But they allegedly called immediately upon finding the documents, and they self-reported. All of that's going to be investigated. The truth will out. Do I see right now criminality? I don't. If there's a cover-up, if documents were destroyed or they waited months before reporting, maybe. That's not what we know right now.
And from what we know based on the public reporting of Donald Trump, do you see a good faith basis to bring a charge of obstruction of justice?
It's a slam dunk. The obstruction part of this is a slam dunk. Not blowing off a subpoena, filing a false form saying everything's been turned over, not letting FBI agents look everywhere when they came to visit nicely. video surveillance of his own Mar-a-Lago security system that shows this guy moving the boxes, right? Because, and then he says, reportedly, the guy says, yeah, Trump told me to move the boxes after the DOJ called him. Oh my God. So I think it's easy. What's not so easy is the whole public perception thing, right? You got Biden, because all you're hearing on the far right is Biden has classified in his house. You can't prosecute Trump for the same thing. Well, it's not the same thing. And that's going to screw things up. I have to tell you, I'm equally, if not far more confident that Trump's getting charged for what really almost had us lose our democracy, which is trying to overturn a legitimate election. I think that's coming.
I hope so as well. I know I had callers earlier in the show. We were talking about this very thing and look, we understand we're all human beings here. We understand the world we live in. If two people have classified documents in their house and we have to put the burden on us to make the case why it's different and you charge one, not the other, it's not about what will the right do. I don't really care. But we know that even the average person might be like, that seems unfair. But if the only charge is obstruction and that's it, then that's different. And then you can make the case. We're not charging anyone for handling or mishandling classified documents. We're just charging Donald Trump for obstruction of justice, which is a felony. And the question, of course, is, will Merrick Garland allow a charge like that to go forward if special counsel Smith recommends it?
Right. And by doing that, I like where you're going with this. You also don't even get into the mire of, does the president have the right to wave a wand and declassify documents? Doesn't matter. We're just charging obstruction. He lied. He hid. He told people to move boxes. Yep.
That's a cleaner case. So Frank, what was your reaction today? The news, a former, they termed him a top FBI official in New York, arrested over his ties to Russian oligarch Charles McGonagall, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, from the New York field office. And the reporting is kind of all over the place. I read a few articles. It appears allegedly he agreed to investigate a rival Russian oligarch in return for payments from Deripaska. Another article said that he was trying to help Deripaska get off the sanctions list. But in any event, he has been charged with crimes now, a shell company, receiving payments through it, forging signatures in order to keep it a secret that Deripaska was paying him and a co-conspirator. What can you tell us about this that I'm missing, that I might be missing from the public reading, the public sources? Anything?
Oh boy, this gets really personal for me, Dean, because Charlie and I have crossed paths. He worked for me for a period of time, briefly, when I was assistant director. He is a senior executive. He retired, a couple of years back as the head of counterintelligence for the New York field office, the largest FBI office in the nation. His head is filled with all of the FBI's most sensitive secrets. And what we're seeing alleged in two separate indictments. Interesting. One out of Washington and one out of New York. Even more interesting, the actual investigation was conducted by FBI Los Angeles. All of this, it seems, as part of a compartmentalizing effort when you're dealing with a senior executive in charge of counterintelligence. A little bit dicey about trying to find people who don't know Charlie, and Charlie won't get wind of the investigation. So we see this kind of triumvirate of LA, New York, Washington taking pieces of it. And when I first heard the news now several months ago that Charlie was under a microscope, I said, okay, it sounds maybe like he retired. He took some money in retirement to get some cash, and he didn't fill out a Foreign Agents Registration Act form as a lobbyist. Sounds like not a lot of there, as Biden would say. No, that's not what happened. What happened is awful. What happened is could be traitorous in some sense if it's proven. And that is that while active duty FBI in charge of counterintel for New York, he takes money. He is cultivated by someone who is believed to be a foreign intelligence officer who's linked to Deripaska. And they really do actual tradecraft with Charlie, meaning they task him to put the intelligence officer's daughter in an internship at NYPD in intelligence and counterterrorism. That's classic recruitment and tradecraft tasking. He agrees to allegedly open a case on Deripaska's enemy, another oligarch. Then, separate out of Washington, another indictment, he takes $250,000 from an Albanian intelligence officer to allegedly open a criminal investigation. So we have somebody who went south on us while on board in the FBI, and the Russians are all over it. And it's really bad. If there's any bright sunshine in this at all, it's that we haven't yet seen an espionage charge. That would have meant that he gave up national defense information. We don't see that here. We see some money laundering. We see a violation of Sanctions Act. We'll see where this goes.
Putting aside that him, your book, The FBI Way, Inside the Bureau's Code of Excellence. I understand. I know you think very highly of the FBI and that you are protective of it in a certain way, to be honest. Is your fear that this kind of reporting allows people on the right to talk more about a deep state, and that you can't trust the FBI and that we have to investigate them and what's going on over there?
Yeah, Dean, they're already doing it. From Senator Marsha Blackburn today on Twitter to Fox News, they jumped on it immediately. But, it's intriguing, right? Because what they're claiming wrongly, by the way, is Charlie McGonagall was in charge of the whole Russia case against Trump. No, he was not. No, that was out of headquarters. And at that very same time, he's working for the Russians. So while they're claiming Russia against Trump, the head FBI guy in charge is in bed with the Russians. It's not quite, they don't have the chronology right, and they don't have the chain of command right, but yeah, they've jumped on it. It's horrible. And we're going to hear it endlessly, Dean, endlessly.
There was and people on the left there's an article from the New York Times from, I can't see the date, October 2016, where apparently they quote McGonagall saying there's no connections between Russia and the Trump campaign. And now that's coming up on the left, and people are like, because his name's right in the article, and I see it now making the rounds on our side, going, oh my God. And, I'm like, what the actual F? I mean, you're like, what is going on? Before we wrap up, I mean, how deeply troubling is this? The guy, but you want the FBI to be respected and protected. If we're not going to have confidence in our law enforcement, people already have questions about law enforcement. I get that. There are injustices in our system, but this kind of stuff is got to be really bad. I have to be honest with you. In the big picture, this is a punch
to the gut for me, for everyone. I was on the phone and texting, calling today around to my former colleagues who all know Charlie as well. We are absolutely distraught, and as for what it means to the Bureau's reputation, et cetera. But as I write in my book, the hallmark of an institution with credibility is that they get it all out. Here, this is really bad. Let's tell you everything we know. Some of it will be classified. We're going to tell you what we know, and we're going to tell you how we're going to fix it. And after Robert Hanssen, arguably the worst spy in FBI history, working for the Russians for 10 years, after he was caught, the FBI changed the way it did internal security in a very big way. So the question that the Bureau has to ask is, how, if at all, did Charlie do an end around and get through the security in place after Hanssen? That's what intrigues me, is how he went around the security measures.
And that movie, there's a movie called Breach, which is about Hanssen. And it was just on cable. I was just watching parts of it the other day about him, and how I watched almost the last scene where they thought he was not going to make the last drop because he got a sense they were onto him, and they said he's going underground. I don't know what the term was. Not underground. There's another term. But he still made it, just his bravado. And that's when they got him. And it was interesting you bring up Hanssen there, and a famous case with the Russian. Well, my friend, very last question. Tomorrow, there's going to be a court argument in Fulton County to release part, if not all, of the grand jury investigation into Trump and all the election potential fraud, about releasing some of this to the public. Should any of this be released before the prosecutor makes a decision on charges?
Yeah, I don't understand that, Dean. Certainly in the federal system, you have to be kidding me. Grand jury material being released wholesale. I don't get it, unless there's some Georgia thing about it's in the public interest. But even then, do you have cooperators? Are you releasing their statements? Are we going to get the statements of people like Lindsey Graham and Rudy Giuliani before the special grand jury? And isn't that going to mess with prosecutive decision making? I don't understand it. I'll be watching it just like you.
Yeah, I actually hope they don't release it in a way. If they're going to charge people, if they release it all, that can indicate perhaps they're not going to charge anyone. Then I'd be deeply disappointed. So, Frank, so much. Thanks for staying long. And next time we'll keep plugging the cruise. Frank Figliuzzi, Captain Figliuzzi, we're going to call him, on his own cruise ship there, going to Alaska. Thanks, my friend.
You're coming with me before it's over.
We're going to see if that works out. Talk to the bosses here. All right, take care. Have a good night, my friend.